Hi there, good morning and welcome back to News Flash. It's still prime morning and we're about to get into the issues a bit more extensively. Well, my name is Razak Musbat. We'd love to hear from you, so stay interactive in the course of the show. Make sure you send your questions and your comment, particularly your comment what you make of the issues. The big issue today has to do with the Chief Justice vetting process which took place yesterday. There was an interesting walkout by the minority. They raised some very interesting concerns about the entire process, but the majority went ahead to hold a vetting, and some of the answers by the Chief Justice, very interesting response to a wide range of issues. So we'll get into all of that. We're going to bring you a little highlights of the major things that came out of the vetting. We'll be sharing that with you very shortly on the touch screen, and of course we'll get into it. Now in studio with me today I've got Dr. Frederick Ntiamwa. He's a lecturer at the University of Ghana and also a member of the NDC. Doc, good morning and good to have you.
Good morning, Razak.
Good to have you.
Yes.
Yeah, I also got Benjamin Gyewu-Appiah. He's a member of the MPP. Ben, good morning and good to have you.
The intelligent Razak, how's it going?
I am very well. I hope you're well too.
Oh, small.
Great. And I've also got the Venerable Amanda Clinton. Good to have you and good to see you. First time meeting you, actually. I've been watching and hearing you a lot. First time meeting you. Good
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, good to have you. So they're going to help us get into it. We'll also have on Zoom Mr. Osei, Dr. Osei Kwapon will join us on Zoom to get his thoughts on it. But of course, as I mentioned, we'll also want to hear from you in the course of the show, so make sure you stay interactive. Let me just get to some of the newspapers very briefly. Chief among them, the Daily Graphic has got the picture of the Chief Justice acting, Paul Baffoe-Bonnie here, and he said, court will serve all fairly. That's one of the responses to the questions that were posed to him at the hearing, and he made that point very strongly, and so it's on the front page. Then Student Loan Trust Fund increases students' loan by 50%. It's also captured on the front page of the Daily Graphic. And nation's oil industry facing sharp decline. Interesting. That's a warning from the energy minister. And Ghana signs bilateral debt agreement with Germany is also captured here. Let me also bring you the Chronicle newspaper, and the Chronicle newspaper has got the IGP here. It says, no nonsense. IGP closes down a heat police station in Volta region after violent attack on officers. Wow, that's interesting. So that's a police station in the Ketu North municipality of the Volta region, where a mob attacked the police personnel on Monday, November 4, and following that attack, the IGP has decided to close the police station. Interesting. So that's what has happened there. Then you have presidential elections should be held in November. That was one of the things that the acting CJ, the nominee, mentioned. He said so they can offer the parties or candidates room to litigate if there is room for any before the swearing in January. So it's an idea that was once raised, but it was shelved. Most of the parties rejected it, but it has come up again. I'm sure it's something that will be explored later on. But let me bring you some major highlights from the vetting now, and let me get to the touch screen and share that with you. So this is what we have here, and one of the questions we want to explore today has to do with judicial independence, okay, and to also interrogate whether the partisan split over the CJ nominee is going to affect the judicial independence, because the minority did raise some concerns about the entire process, and I'm going to get into that very shortly. So what we know, the minority have said following their walkout that they reject the nomination of the Chief Justice. They reject that and subsequently walked out. Now, before the entire process, they had indicated that they were not going to boycott the process. They were going to sit in it, and they indeed appear. But when it all started, and of course, we'll bring you a little soundbite in terms of what happened at the very beginning. It was the very beginning of the entire process that led to all the disagreements, which resulted in the minority walking out. Now, what is the minority or MPP's concern about the process? They say that the former CJ, Gyewu Tokonu, has got some cases in court challenging the appointment or nomination of the acting CJ, and a few other things also challenging her removal of Chief Justice. And fundamentally, they are saying that because these things are in court, it's important for them to be attended to before the vetting process is done on the nominated Chief Justice, all right? And they also raise concern about conflict of interest, and all of these things. They believe that let's deal with the issues in court. Let's ensure that the things in court challenging the removal of the former Chief Justice, even challenging this whole process, let's deal with them before we go through the vetting. Now, for most of these issues, in fact, the CJ has himself, he was asked about it, and he shared his opinion about it. And of course, we'll get into that. He says, well, all these things can go on simultaneously, all right? The fact that a suit is in court, a case is in court challenging the process does not mean that a constitutional body should prevent it from doing their job. He believes that, well, the case can still be in court and Parliament can still vet, but the minority disagree on that position. But what do we know? The former CJ, it's been 72 days since the president removed her from her role as Chief Justice. 72 days. And in that very time, the now Chief Justice nominee, Paul Baffoe-Bonnie, has been acting for the past 202 days. He's been acting, so he's very much gotten familiar with the administrative work of the judicial arm of government. Now, in terms of Paul Baffoe-Bonnie himself, 17 years at the Supreme Court. 17 years at the Supreme Court. It explains why some of the members of the Supreme Court, even some lawyers, are saying that, well, it is an appointment or nomination in the right direction because he's senior. He's been there for a very long time, so why not? He should be handed that. So he's an experienced judge that cannot be questioned. Now, this is where it gets a bit interesting. He's 68 years of age now. In December, he's going to be 69. Next year, he's going to be 70, and he's expected to retire at the age of 70. So even if he is approved as Chief Justice, he's fundamentally going to work for, say, 1 year, because next year, then he'll be out. So some are saying, well, if that's the case, why didn't minority just allow him to go to if though he's going to work for just 1 year? It's similar to the case of the IGP, who equally had just about 1 year. He's also going to go on retirement by the end of the year or so. So that is a very fundamental one. But then a few things also came out of the vetting, all right? A few things came out of the vetting. And one of the things the Chief Justice nominee mentioned had to do with the elections, where he said, well, we should move the election from December 7 to November 7. That is his view there. He also spoke about certain, in terms of why that is the case, so that it could allow for time to settle a number of the election petitions before January 7. And of course, remember in recent time when the presidential election was taken to court, it had to drag for a very long time and all of that. Then even as recent as 2020, when the elections were contested, within a very short period of time, it was dealt with. So he's thinking if we do the election in November, hopefully we can exhaust most of these disputes in December and eventually go ahead and swear the elected president on January 7. Of course, he also spoke about establishing a 24-hour sitting court. So you're going to see the court sitting in the morning, in the afternoon, in the evening, on weekends. And he even spoke about introducing, using AI to empanel judges. So the manual process of empaneling judges is hoping that they could avoid that process and even use AI. So a lot of technology he's looking to introduce into the court. He's also talking about introducing the parole system also in our court. Then he spoke about cases involving former CJ not yet ripe for hearing, because that was one of the concerns also that was raised by the minority, that he has decided not to empanel judges on matters relating to the removal of the CJ because he is going to benefit from it. But he responded and said, well, first of all, there's an entire process In fact, empanel of the judges is the last process. There's the listing of the cases and the entire process before he finally empaneled the judges. In fact, the case they are referring to has not been listed, and the listing is not done by him, it's done by the registrar, and they have not even done that for him to even empanel. So for anyone who is familiar with the court process will not even accuse him of not hearing the matter or delaying the matter simply because he wants to benefit from it. So that's how he responded to it. Then he said the current judicial appointment system is fit for purpose, and that's very fundamental. He says it is fit for purpose and nobody should try changing it or whatsoever. Well, a number of people also found that to be quite interesting. But another thing he raised had to do with the working condition for lower judicial staff, and also spoke about expanding admission to the law school, and that's something that it does appear there's a consensus on that. The Attorney General has even working on a bill to try and expand same. The government believes in that, and the acting CJ also believes in that. So we expect that that process will go through seamlessly. So basically that's it in terms of the major highlight from the vetting. But let's get into it now. Let's try and see if this move by the minority to reject the nomination of the CJ is going to affect our judiciary in any way. Is it going to further deepen the mistrust that some people have about the judicial system, or confidence that some people have lost about the judicial system? Because the acting CJ indicated that, well, he's going to work to help improve the confidence people have in the judicial system, because according to him, it's a perception that some people have lost confidence in the system. And today we have the right people to get into it. Well, let's get into it now. Doc, once again, good morning. Thank you very much for joining us. Yeah, good morning. Before we get into it, I just want us to look at the clash that ensued between the majority leader and the minority leader, because that is what led to the walkout. So, team, if we've got the clash between the majority leader and minority leader ready, we can watch that very closely. It was a very simple matter. Attorney Markin reading his preliminary comment and the majority leader objecting to some of the things, and there was a standoff, and it took almost 2 to 3 hours and nothing could be done. All right, so this is how it all unfolded.
But an unshakable resolve to defend the Constitution of Ghana, protect judicial independence, and uphold the rule of law. We gather to vet a disputed nominee for office of Chief Justice of Ghana. This should be a moment of national pride and institutional renewal. Instead, it has become a test of whether Ghana's judiciary will remain independent or fall under executive and political.
Honorable Minority Leader. Honorable Minority Leader, just hold it a second. Yes, Honorable Ayarga.
Mr. Chairman, we are here because our rules say we should be here. And the same rules indicate exactly what we can do or not do when we gather here. Order 1237. 1237 says that the conduct of the speaker, the Chief Justice, members and justices of the Superior Court of Judicature shall not be raised in Parliament except upon a substantive motion. You cannot raise anything about the conduct of a member of the Superior Court of Judicature of this country in Parliament except by a substantive motion. No substantive motion is before us, and so the ranking member has no right, no lawful authority to raise anything about what happened in court, the processes leading to a removal of anybody and the nomination of anybody. You have no right, pursuant to our rules, to raise those issues. So be guided, because if you raise them, I'm going to object.
First of all, the majority leader is clearly acting in bad faith.
When you refer to the nominee as Chief Justice, the minority objected to the reference to the nominee as Chief Justice and said that he is not a Chief Justice, he is a nominee to the post of Chief Justice, and so you must refer to him appropriately. Or acting Chief Justice, because he's also an acting Chief Justice. And an acting Chief Justice is a Chief Justice. Now, he has referred to the nominee as a disputed nominee. Disputed nominee. Disputed nominee. You are in court what? Are you in court litigating his nomination? No. Are you in court disputing his nomination? You are not in court challenging his nomination. So to the extent that you are not in court challenging his nomination, there is no dispute about his nomination.
Let me be unequivocally clear. The minority in Parliament objects to and unequivocally condemns the coordinated campaign to subjudicate Ghana's judiciary to political domination. Chairman, the facts speak for themselves.
I object again. I object again.
On the 22nd
I object again.
April,
I object again, Chairman.
On the 22nd of April,
I object again.
2025.
Chairman, I object again. I object.
We would want to state on record that the majority can proceed with the questions. We do not intend to proceed with any question. We reject the nomination, and the records should reflect that the report of this committee be a majority report. We cannot be part of a process that would give right to another and deny another of her bona fide as enshrined in the Constitution. Chairman, that said, we would yield to you to proceed whilst we exit.
So that was the minority leader, Osahene, there. And of course, you also had the majority leader, Muhammad Yariga, also objecting to some of the comments that have been made by the minority leader. Now, I was looking to start with Doc first, but let me start with Amanda. Then I understand Dr. Osai Kwapon has also joined us. I also get his thoughts on this. Then I'll come to the politicians to do their politics on this matter. So, Amanda, this is why the minority decided not to take part in the entire process. First of all, let's talk about it before we come into the vet and some of the issues that came. What do you make of all of this? Do you think we missed out on anything with the minority deciding to walk out?
It was expected that the minority would, and this isn't new in terms of the world. It's happened in the United States, Sri Lanka, Pakistan. This is, a precedent has been made for something like this, and eventually where it leads to is laws being changed to some extent. I think Sophia Akufo mentioned she was the only dissenting view in the Council of State who abstained from this and later said that she felt that there needed to be a constitutional review because it was far too easy to remove the Chief Justice. But I just want to reiterate that the mechanism of Article 146 was followed, and although there are a lot of petitions, etc., the truth is the letter of the word was followed, even if the spirit wasn't. And what I say by that is that, a future amendment would have to look at, there's no preliminary filter. For instance, the president controls the early stages of this, and there aren't as many procedural safeguards, and anybody can bring a petition, and the panel, it could be said, is potentially biased. So how do you make it less so? So although the minority have a great point, and they're boycotting, and the US, it's happened before, and it's happened in Pakistan, and it's one way to go. Everybody has to keep at the forefront, particularly the judiciary, that we need to safeguard the sanctity of the judiciary, because it is about public perception. You know, all this who are in the public sphere, what is the public thinking about these people are supposed to lead us in deciding, etc. And, you know, the judicial independence is the soul of democracy, and without that, rights become theoretical. You see what I mean? So although this is going back and forth, I think the judiciary have to stand tall in setting a bar to this and making sure it's not repeated by perhaps having an amendment for Article 146, because we also do have to remember the Chief Justice is equal to the President in terms of separation of powers. And the way she was just dismissed and removed, I mean, we could get into, you know, discussions about feminism, etc., but the way she was removed, it could have been done better. And we can't say she should have retired because she knew this was coming, sort of thing. All we can do is to remember the sanctity of the judiciary, remember the amendment of Article 146, and that as much as the NPP and NDC keep on fighting in public, and as much as the judiciary seems like it's not singing to one voice, all this leads to is poor public confidence.
But what about, let me just get your thoughts on the legal issues the minority raised, that, look, there are cases in court, and because of that, they are, if I'd asked the Speaker to hold on with this vetting process for the cases in courts to be dealt with, so that we can know, because they created a hypothetical situation where what if the release that the former CJ is seeking is given to him? How will those releases be enforced if this process goes through? And now we have a Chief Justice, and in a hypothetical situation where the release and eventually the removal is reversed and all of that, how would that be enforced? So they were praying that let the matters in court be dealt with before we get into it. Well, it was the opinion of the Speaker that, look, the matters in court should stay in court and they should continue being in court, and Parliament will continue to do their vetting. And the fact that the matter is in court should not prevent Parliament from doing their work. That was the view of the Speaker. That's why the vetting went ahead. Well, what do you make of this? Is this something that...
I think that the vacuum that is left with Article 146 means that even those within NPP, and especially since they have a lot of lawyers, etc., would have to admit that the law was followed in terms of Article 146 as it is. There was a lot of discretion as to who could bring the petition, how early on, what is the standard, the barometer, how easy it is to just remove her. And that is why I think Mrs. Sophia Akufo said that you know, it's significantly weakened the judiciary in terms of this removal process. So what we have to do is move forward, because we risk not only this moment, but we risk the future if there's absolutely no public confidence. But I wouldn't agree with the minority to some extent, because as lawyers, you know, we think of the fact that, for instance, when we get a client who has as much money to burn because he's just going to, you know, go through, sue a whole bunch of people, we can just keep filing in court. And so the danger of saying that you're going to wait for all these cases to pass and then wait for maybe ECOWAS is that we need a sitting and active Chief Justice. And above all, we need all these egos to kind of get over themselves and remember that they are in service. And it's about the sanctity of the judiciary. You see what I mean? So I don't agree that we have to sit and wait for cases, because the second those cases finish, another one can be filed.
All right, great. Let me just get the thoughts of Doc also via Zoom, and then I'll come to my good friend is also in the studio now. Dr. Kwapon, Do you think that we missed an opportunity with the minority deciding to walk out of this vetting, an opportunity to, maybe interrogate the Chief Justice a bit further? Because understandably, if they had been there, we know that the vetting process would have taken quite a different turn. Do you think we missed an opportunity even to create a sense of bipartisan, approach to this entire vetting process?
Yeah, good morning to you. Good morning to your viewers. That, for me, is the key thing about the minorities walkout. In my view, it robbed the whole process of something very important, which is the ability to also hear their voice, hear their thoughts, their line of questioning. Surely we could all have anticipated that if they had stayed to participate in the process, probably it would have been moments of contention and all of that. But at least you would have had their participation in the process. But in their view, given the position that they had taken about all of the happenings within the judiciary, I can see why they chose the option of not participating. But I think it robbed the process of at least having their voice as part of it.
But do you think it will affect the Chief Justice in terms of her going about to do her work, the confidence that the public need to have in him as he goes about to do his work when he's eventually confirmed? Do you think it will affect his work in any way? Because clearly what it means is that you have the opposition party continuously insisting that they do not have confidence in him, questioning his role, and the whole confidence that we are looking to build in the judiciary, of course, will be affected if you have the opposition taking such a position.
I don't believe it would affect his work. I don't believe it would affect his administrative capacity to manage an important branch of the judiciary. But that sort of lingering effect of the Article 146 process would still be around, in the air. And you notice that this issue has become extremely partisan, that the partisan litigation over 146 and the removal of the former Chief Justice, I don't see it ending anytime soon. And so whilst it would not affect the work of Justice Baffoe-Bonnie if he is approved as the next substantive Chief Justice, I think one of the things that faces him, what he would have to do, is how he navigates some of these lingering effects of this litigation over 146 and the step he takes, not necessarily in dealing with the partisan rancor that has come to characterize this conversation, but finding ways to rebuild confidence in the judiciary within the general public. Because again, all our institutions, including the courts, if you look at citizens' sentiments as expressed in the Afrobarometer survey, is at an all-time low when it comes to the issues of trust. So you are already dealing with the challenge of trust and restoring faith and trust in institutions like the courts. And then when you have this layer of this mistrust and this issue of political partisan rancoring over a process that removed a substantive Chief Justice, it further complicates the challenges that an incoming substantive Chief Justice would face.
Well, Doc, thank you very much, because I'm going to come to you to get a thought on what you think the acting Chief Justice, the nominee, if finally confirmed, the Chief Justice can do to try and possibly get them on board, get the political divide on board so that we can move on as a country. If there's anything he can do to try and make that happen, because questions about trust, as you raised, I mean, MPP has a huge following. If you're talking about an excess of, say, 3 to 4 million people, a base of that kind who believe that every decision that's coming from the Supreme Court is biased and is questionable and all of that, I think it might not augur well for the independence of the judiciary. So I'll get your thoughts on what you think the CJ can do to try and win them over if there is anything like that. But Doc, let me come to you. And your party in Parliament said they were going to go ahead with the vetting regardless of the concerns the minority had raised. They said vetting in the Ayabeye, and they indeed went ahead to do it. And the concerns being raised now is that the way you appear to be patronizing the CJ, some are saying that, well, it's creating doubt, it's creating concerns about bias and mistrust, because you appear too nice with the CJ, who ordinarily is supposed to be independent.
Thank you, Raza, and good morning to my co-panelists here. See, one thing I want to say is that if you look at what happened yesterday, it was unfortunate. And you look at the action of the minority leader, I would describe it as something that is very dishonorable.
Dishonorable?
Yes, because as an honorable member, I wasn't expecting that from him. Why? I'm giving you a reason. Very disrespectful to the nominee. And also somebody who doesn't abide by rules. See, Parliament has its own standing orders. And he's made his mind that he wants to go against every single standing order just because of the committee. And this is not something that we should entertain and accept in our democracy. Yes, there are opportunities given at the plenary where you can table a motion for discussion. At that point, you have the right to make your point. You were just given a short time. And you remember the chairman was saying that let's work with what is called brevity. We're talking about just make an open remark. Welcome the nominee. If you have one or two things, say. But you don't go against standing orders. And I'm not surprised, because he had made earlier statements that the committee sitting is not going to come on. And I don't understand where he draws his powers from. Is it a demigod? Is this somebody that cannot be touched?
But some also said that. Some also said that. If you, for instance, when we watched the video and we heard the objections by the majority leader, some also said that yes, he had the opportunity. As a practice in the committee, he gets to make his preliminary comments, which he was doing, and there was an argument that, well, the majority leader, if you have any concerns about the things he's saying, you will also have the opportunity to.
They read part of the standing order, and you realize that he was saying that the head of Parliament, who happens to be the Speaker, the head of the Judiciary, who happens to be the CJ, and other members of the Superior Court of Adjudicature, unless a substantive motion has been put on the floor of Parliament for discussion, you don't talk about their conduct. And that is exactly, he said that the committee's conduct was, the committee, everything they did was opaque, meaning that they went to hide themselves somewhere and brought about reports to the point that what they did was what? Travetory to what? Justice. And which is not right in our own sense. Because if you look at their standing order, he was not supposed to make such comments. And consistently, the majority leader was prompting him that, no, this is not where we are supposed to go. We've had chances, we've had norms whereby we all give open remarks. But I'm not surprised. Let me tell you why. Because this is somebody in 2017, he was a board chair for Ghana Water Company Limited, where we have issues with Kwabena Edubuahin. Do you think that such a person would want the CJ that at one point in time he was able to submit a petition on Friday that as part of their practice, the Supreme Court doesn't sit on Friday. Within some few hours, they were able to empanel themselves, sit on the matter, and bring it to finality? No. It's not going to happen.
So wait,
somebody who in 2024...
You made a link.
Somebody who in 2024... Can you...
Yeah.
I'm trying to tell you that the whole buhaha about Edubua has to do with monies that were transferred from Ghana Water Company's account into his private account. When he was a board chair from 2017, we also know that in 2024, he was also appointed as the ECG board chair, 2024, last year. We've seen the Public Accounts Committee. What is going on? We've seen the expenditure, the ballooning and all that. I
think his fear is...
He's fighting for his destiny. That is the whole thing. I'm telling you.
If the CJ is confirmed, what might happen?
If the outgone CJ is still, sitting on the seat, a lot of these issues, it won't go anywhere. That is the point.
The case is still in courts. So there's a judge who is, overseeing the case in court.
Yes.
All right.
But we have to come to the finality.
Even without the CJ nominee having been confirmed, he's still working as acting CJ and he's in charge of administrative. So he doesn't even need to be CJ. Even while he's not CJ, he's doing the work of CJ as acting CJ. He's empaneling judges, he's allocating cases, etc. So I'm just trying to wrap up the point about, well, he's afraid that he doesn't want him to be confirmed because cases are in court that it might affect him. Because already the man is doing the job.
No. Whoever, he's fighting for, which is outgone. I would say outgone. And he's gone for good.
Yeah.
The former CJ. He is wishing that the former CJ, whatever petition or submissions is made to the court, it will turn around one day in the shortest possible time, that everything is going to be reversed to the point that he will come and sit on the seat. And so if this one is confirmed, that opportunity will is not going to happen in the next 1 or 2 years. Because until this one retires, there's not going to be the opportunity for any. And once we have a substantive CJ, there is no way that whatever charges or whatever issues he has raised is going to go any far. So that is his fear. And you see, let's look at Article 146.
But just to be clear, though,
yes,
Afenyomakin has not been charged by anybody in any court. He doesn't have any case in any court.
So let's be open-minded. And what I want to say is that, you see, if you were involved, because recently we've seen the Public Accounts Committee, if you were a board chair and there were a lot of rot and mess in a particular sector where you were the chair, the final authority in terms of decision making, do you think that if legal actions are supposed to be pressed, you'll be just sitting somewhere and that is all? Your actions will never be questioned?
Except no legal action has been taken.
So what we are saying is that you've heard about the committee's report, that a number of things have to be sent to court, those monies that have to be retrieved and all that. So this is a process. He can see afar. Where we sit, he knows what he has done, and he knows what is ahead. And that is why he's now fighting hard to make sure that at least he'll be able to save, his own soul.
Interesting.
So what I wanted to, add is that if you look at the Article 146, Amanda rightly put it, that truly, everything was followed in terms of what has been put down. Yes, there's a constitutional review ongoing, but I do not support the idea that we have to make that article so strict that it becomes very difficult if somebody misconducts him or herself as a CJ to remove him. Are we saying that a CJ is above everybody? Are we talking about a diamond or a platinum citizenship in our country here, such that certain people, they are untouchable, irrespective of... Can I end this point? Irrespective of the fact that they have misconducted themselves or they have been incompetent. The laws are clear. Fine, we can amend certain portions of it, but I think that, one, nobody should be above the law.
All right, great. I'll come back to you, especially the point about the constitutional review. You think the way the law is okay, we should not touch this?
I'm not saying everything is okay, but the mere idea and the thinking that it is so easy, so let's make it a little robust. Let's make it I mean, a process that is so tiring that it becomes so difficult. So that anybody who sits on that throne can decide to do anything with our judicial system, because now the system is so robust that even if I misconduct myself, even if I become incompetent, nobody can remove me, because at the end of the day, the process is tiring. It's not easy to do that.
All right, Ben, yeah, you've been very patient.
Razak, I mean, I think I would have agreed with Dr. Ntiamwa, but if I do, we will both be wrong. So, I mean, I want to state that, you know, under Article 103 of the 1992 Constitution, it has always been that Parliament would have to conduct, I mean, when the committee, together with the standing orders of Parliament, when these committees are formed, what Article 103 tells us that there must be a conduct of openness and respect for diverse perspectives. And that's not what happened yesterday. In fact, I would want to say, and I have accused the executive of sleeping with the judiciary, and eventually, I mean, the legislature, perhaps, let me put it in another words that would really let people understand. The executive is having threesome with judiciary and the legislature. And it is very sad. You see, Razak, there is a dark cloud surrounding our democracy. And if we are not careful, the kind of precedent that these leaders are setting for the future generation is very, very dangerous. What happened yesterday? Look, the vetting of a Chief Justice nominee is supposed to be one of the most secret duties of Parliament.
Yeah.
But what we witnessed yesterday was very, 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 very shameful.
Why?
On the part of the majority.
Why? Why do you say that?
In any attempt to censure the minority caucus of Parliament is something that is dangerous. Look, clothed in arrogance was on full glare of the public how the majority leader was trying to censure the minority leader.
I mean, he was objecting to specific...
And that's what I'm saying. Look, if you look at Article 103 of the 1992 Constitution, and if you read through all the standing orders of Parliament, you would come to know that there is a room for different opinions. If there should be any dissenting, they have the right to be heard. So the minority leader yesterday, in any form, was dissenting to the vetting of this nominee because there's a dispute around it. Is the acting CJ who went to Parliament for vetting? Is there any dispute around him? Is there any? I want to know. Is there any dispute around him? Yes, if there is, yes. That's why the minority caucus in Parliament are raising all these objections.
There's dispute, but the dispute is not relative to his nomination as CJ. The dispute has to do with the removal of the former.
It has to do with constitutional infringement. If supposedly, if the nominee is being vetted and approved by Parliament, and then later, when a panel is being constituted, goes to court on Gertrude Tokonu's case, and then there's a flip. How do you then see this?
I mean, that's hypothetical.
No, so I am saying that
never make progress. You know that.
I am saying that on principle and on constitutional grounds, the minority had a stand. In any case, if there is anything that was very dissenting, they had the chance to let the whole world know that they were being decent on the nominee.
Well, what about this view also that, look, these were just preliminary comments, and if they are objecting to it, they are raising concerns about it, why don't you just forgo them and focus on the substantive issue, which is vetting of the nominee? You get to probe, you get to ask questions, you get to raise germane questions about the entire judicial process. This was just a 15-minute process which they were objecting to. Why don't you just let them have it, and then go ahead and allow your members, because you had quite a number of people, about 6 to 7 members of parliament, who were waiting to ask different kind of questions. That probably you should have prioritized that.
You are right. From the very moment the vetting began, there were needless interjection by the majority leader. In any case, if the minority leader, who happens to be Afenyo Makin, is trying to make his point on the standing orders, in fact, he quoted standing orders that really, supported his claims on the vetting process. In any case, that's the normal procedure. There has to be an opening remarks. But when there are needless interjections, when there is arrogance of power, when there is a motion to censor somebody who is dissenting, then you are not helping the whole opening remarks session, which happened yesterday. What I'm trying to get across is that what happened yesterday was very shameful. But on the principle of constitutional arrangement, what the minority did was right, because the nominee who has been nominated has a surrounding dispute that needs to be determined. And in any case, if we decide to go about it and not in any regard have respect for the 1992 Constitution, that would have brought a lot of, misunderstanding to all of us. So I support exactly what the minority was doing. Now, I also do understand that the walkout, perhaps some people wouldn't agree with the walkout, but I agree in principle.
Why?
Because at the end of the day, we must not give light-mindedness to people who in any capacity try to show that the 1992 Constitution is something that we can play with. So I am trying to say that, in summary, I'm trying to say that what happened in Parliament yesterday is an eye-opener.
Now, I want to...
The judiciary is not having its independence because, look, the executive, the man that occupies the executive throne right now, His Excellency John Dramani Mahama, in opposition, accused the judiciary, he accused the bench that the Elsewhere government had promoted people who were members of their party. We all know that in this country, if there should be any political polarization, it shouldn't be the judiciary. The judiciary is always supposed to be independent. But what is happening currently in our nation is not something that is, in the full glare of the public, everybody is witnessing what is currently going on in our judiciary. Look, I have a personal problem even with the nominee. And maybe when we go into it, I don't even know if I have time. On the supposed sentencing of Ataa Ayi.
We'll get into that.
Okay.
We'll get into that. So
and those
plan for me.
Those are the pillars that I would draw, and I would want people to understand that the nominee himself is even not fit for that position upon that pronunciation that he did yesterday. And if you are saying we'll go into that, I'll wait for my time.
All right, great. Let me come to Doc on Zoom. Doc, let's come to the vetting itself, because, of course, the majority went ahead to do the vetting. First of all, what were your major highlights from the vetting? Is there anything you had that interested you in the responses from the CJ?
Three quick things that struck me. One was the conversation about the jurisdiction of the court in terms of all the kinds of cases that we've designed our Supreme Court to take, not just on constitutional matters, but also it has appellate jurisdiction, etc., etc. And getting that picture of the administrative burden it places on the court, the implications for the number of Supreme Court justices managing the caseload and all of that, and the fact that perhaps if you want to find a more manageable caseload for the Supreme Court, and have a more efficient, speedy way of handling cases that gets to the nation's highest court, that at some point we may want to rethink whether we want to cut back on the kinds of jurisdiction over certain cases that comes to the court or not. So for me, that was quite instructive. Also, he talked about, I think it was in his opening remarks, this whole idea of finding ways to restore confidence in the court, not just the Supreme Court, but in our entire judiciary. There was an initiative that was begun under the former CJ called Leading Justice Initiative, which, in my opinion, was going to help restore some of that lost confidence we are seeing in the courts, as captured very well by the Afrobarometer survey. It may not have to be the same thing, but I just hope that some kind of reform effort would be undertaken, since he himself recognizes that the court is not in a good place when it comes to the general public confidence in that institution. The last thing I would highlight is, I found it very instructive the reason he gave for the number of years he sentenced the notorious armed robber to prison for. And for me, the question that it raises for me is whether, because of security and safety concerns of our judges, does that some way somehow influence the sentences they give. I'm no legal expert, I'm no lawyer, but perhaps maybe certain sentencing guidelines, as well as things we can put in place to assure our judges that their safety and their security would not be compromised in the event that they have to hand out certain sentences to criminals, right? That if we can reconcile those two things, that hopefully a judge wouldn't have to go into a case thinking, instead of a 5-year sentence, because of my safety and security, I have to give that person 3, 4, 5 times the number of years of that penalty.
But will you find that to be unfair if indeed it's a major part of the reason why they give us some of these sentences?
Yes, I'll find that to be very unfair, because what it suggests to me is that whilst your crime should earn you a certain particular sentence, that other sort of extraneous factors are taken into play or are taken into account to give you a more punitive sentence than ordinarily you would get within whatever sentencing guidelines we have or do not have.
Interesting. Doc, let me come to you, even just following from that point about the sentence matter. When you heard about that, were you surprised, or you are familiar with this already?
Oh, I definitely heard. That was one of the main things I heard him say. And I just think, we should go back. High moral character and proven integrity. Obviously, he's been 17 years on the bench. We can't even try and question that. But when, a person sort of betrays themselves and makes such comments about, I gave him 30 years because he could come back for me and my family. Yeah. We will be the first ones he attacks. It doesn't give the public confidence as to logic and legal mastery and, you know what I mean? Those sort of things. Because you don't have to be the best judge in the world, but
I've monitored the
reasoning is not.
And you're just talking about how public feel about it.
No, how anybody would feel, as the gentleman, the professor just said, there's sentencing guidelines, and you can go to the higher ends of those sentencing guidelines because you think this person has shown no remorse, he will do it again, he has a propensity, the guidelines are there for a reason. He has a propensity to commit similar type offenses, he has no remorse, those sort of things, and then you can do a higher threshold, fine. But to say that you think that the person would come back for you and your family lacks logic, because giving them a 70-year sentence would mean they could even get one of their group to come for you and their hands would be clean because there would be no connection. Do you see what I mean? So the logic wasn't there per se. And if that is a sign of what is to come for the next 2 years. It might not be the next Denning, in terms of a really good judge in England.
Beyond that, though, what other things do you pick up from his vetting, which, as a lawyer, you think will help the court?
I think it would really help when he says about a 24-hour court. I thought it was very good that he focused on AI because it's the future and to reduce the amount of time. Because the advantage judges have is that they've gone through reasoning and judgments, etc. But with AI, you can perhaps lessen the time. And I love the fact that he says that he's going to find ways for the public to restore confidence in the judiciary, because although it was said that they are not untouchable in terms of Chief Justice, nobody is saying they're not untouchable, but Article 146 definitely needs a serious revision because history shows what happens when it's not protected, essentially. And apart from personalities and NDC, NPP, and all these things going on, I would just really like your listeners to just, and for the judiciary, particularly the judiciary is looking, for them to think about one word alone: the sanctity of the judiciary is what is and should be at the forefront. And if they have to get everybody in line in terms of they balance the arms of government, then they should remember that role, because independence from external control, impartial decision-making, integrity and incorruptible judgment, and faith of the public in justice. This is their mandate. And so once you stick to that mandate, then perhaps you forget all the other noise of politics and different things, because they balance other arms of government and they are not untouchable. But the judiciary really does need to remember their role, I think, moving forward.
Yeah, great. Ben, your main concern has to do with the Ataa Ayi one.
Right. Look, Razak, all of us seated here, we wouldn't be on a voyage of truth if we do not condemn with exactly what the nominee or, I don't know, the acting CJ said. Now let's go to constitutional grounds. Under Article 296 of the 1992 Constitution, it is required that the use of discretionary powers must be fair, 1, 2, candid, not arbitrary, capricious, or biased. So if you have a nominee that was going to sentence somebody on or in conjunction with his lifespan on this earth, that perhaps he was afraid that if he had given 30 years to a known armed robber, he was afraid that if the person came out, he would attack his family. And then after he intentionally gave 70 years, because by the time the armed robber comes out of prison, he would have been dead and gone. This is very dangerous.
Isn't this a weakness of the system?
This is very, very dangerous.
A weakness of the system, the safety of the judges.
You know what we have to do right away, Razak? Every cases that Baffoe-Bonnie, acting CJ, have sat on, we have to go back and look at the sentence.
Really?
Look, there must be justice for Ataa Ayi. And look, what he did yesterday, I found it very, very amusing, because like-mindedly, members of the majority caucus were laughing about it. This is very dangerous. I have never seen anything like this before. Look, I want to say something, and this might probably be my last words. On the walls of Prince Hamid Amma, he says, we were taught in criminal law that punishment must serve several purposes, including retribution, deterrence, rehabilitation, incapacitation, and atonement. What we were not taught, however, is the extent to which a person might be punished not in the name of justice, but out of a judge's fear for personal safety. This is very dangerous. This is very dangerous. And we must, look, if you you have somebody as a CJ, Baffoe-Bonnie, do you know his history? His brother, Eugene Baffoe-Bonnie, was convicted in the NCA trial in the erstwhile government. So if you have somebody as a CJ, one who determined people's sentence based on his lifespan, on personal sentiment, do you know what will happen to a Dubois? That perhaps on any sentencing, the judges who will sentence a Dubois should also consider the fact that his brother was imprisoned by the erstwhile government.
That will only hold if you are suggesting that as Chief Justice, he influences every other judge relative to the decisions they take about every other case. Because the case you're referring to, it is one that he personally gave sentencing on. But what you're now suggesting is that he will influence the decisions of other judges. That is a bit far-fetched.
Do you give respect to your bosses here? Mm-hmm. Sometimes do you, when in any way, if you do not agree with them on your own principles, but then the leaders tells you, or your leader or your boss tells you to go this way, sometimes for the safety of your livelihood, to protect your work, you may be able to do some of these things.
But if that is the case, then we are in serious danger.
And that's what I'm telling you.
If you are suggesting that the CJ can influence other judges, then it's a dangerous path we are on.
That should even be one of the minor things that we consider. That the acting CJ actually, he himself has shot his foot. And look, I am really scandalized by the pronouncement that he said yesterday.
All right, then let me come to that.
Brother, before I land, if the lawyers of Ataa Ayi are listening to us, they must go back to the court. They must go back and appeal for the sentencing, because we know that the appeal that came out of that trial was based on fear. And it's in breach of Article 296 of the 1992.
All right, let me come to Doc. Doc, let me get your thoughts on this briefly.
Razak, I'm sad. You know why? The way Benghazi is speaking, it tells you how they have run the judiciary in the past 8 years. That the Chief Justice, who is outgone, has to whip in line those at the bench, because that is what he is saying. That if Justice Baffoe-Bonnie is finally elected as the Chief Justice, it means that he's going to whip everybody on the bench in line, because this is what he has seen in the past 8 years. Because they've been in power for 8 years and they've seen the works of our former CJ. No, that is what you are saying. Because you have made it clear that you have to listen to your boss.
And this is what we have seen. On a 70-year sentence.
This is what we have seen. Please, I didn't interject.
Of course.
I expect that when we're talking, I was listening to you.
Fundamental human rights you are talking about.
I do not agree with his logic and reasoning on any day. Because the past 8 years, that dark era that we went through, whereby a CJ had to whip everybody in line at the bench, we have come out of it.
But if you say again, because that was the same point Ben made. I'm coming, just a little follow-up. The point about whipping everybody in line. In the past 8 years, we had judges who acquitted your our finance minister.
If somebody is here telling you, if the crocodile is coming out of the river, is telling you that there's something there, who are you to go and ask again? They just left power. 8 years, being in power for 8 years, and they have seen. See, we were here. I gave you an example, whereby on one Friday morning, our Honorable Afenyomakin sent an issue to the Supreme Court. On Fridays, as the normal practice of Supreme Court, they do not sit on Fridays. he was able to get the support of our CJ, who is the outgone,
Doc,
to make sure that they start on the case.
I mean, sorry to interrupt you, but we have an issue with your sound. The sound guy is coming in to fix it very shortly, so you can make your point. Let me come to Doc. Please, let's come and fix it so he can make his point. He needs to make his point. But while we are doing that, let me come to Doc Zoom so that we can use the studio to fix him. Doc, I mean, earlier I was asking you about what do you think can be done, the CJ can do, if any, to try and at least get everybody on board, rally the country, unite the country around the judiciary so that we can make progress as a country. Is there anything he can do in that regard?
Very good question. For me, at the end of the day, it is the perceived fairness of the process. You see, where the partisanship starts showing is in not just the process, right? So if you think back to some of the charges that were leveled against the former Chief Justice, you would hear examples of, well, on the politically sensitive questions that was brought to the Supreme Court, this group of people, brought a case, and for 1, 2, 3 years it was lingering, but this other group brought a case, and within days they got a hearing, etc., etc. It is some of those, handling of those politically sensitive cases that, for me, would show the hand of the highest officer of our judiciary as saying, I'm trying to be as fair and as impartial as possible. But you see, when you get to a point where judicial decisions are interpreted through very partisan lines, that I'm not sure what a Chief Justice can do, because it's not as though you can manipulate the results or the outcome of a case to say that, well, if we have 10 cases, let's ensure that, quote unquote, the ones that are perceived to be a case brought by one of the main political parties, give them 5 wins, and then the other ones give them 5 wins, and then it all adds up, and that's how a fair judiciary. For me, it is in the processes that leads to the outcome, whichever way, that can help temper some of the extreme partisanship that we are seeing in terms of how our 2 main political parties and some of their diehard followers are beginning to view the judiciary.
All right, Doc. Doc, let me come to you so you can, make a point.
What I was saying is that if you listen to what Benghazi was saying, clearly it tells you that the judiciary for the past 8 years has not been independent, because now a CJ who has been removed can keep people in line. That is what he's saying, that he's scared. He's afraid that the incoming CJ is going to do similar. But I can assure you that he's not going to do that.
No, but
because the reset agenda.
No, but the point about the former CJ keeping everybody in line, that would be quite.
He has raised it.
No, but that's unfair.
No, but that is what he has raised. That is what he has raised.
Because we know that even as I mentioned, our former finance minister won a case in court.
So what I'm
while that CJ was
but
there,
we were here where we saw the FC, the unanimous FC, whereby we have 5-0, 7-0. Were you not here? We've seen that. And we thought it was a normal process, but now he's confessing, telling everybody that the past 8 years, what we witnessed was that if you are the CJ, you can keep everybody in line. But that is the unfortunate statement.
Well, I didn't say that.
He has made this.
Brother, let me tell you correct him when he makes.
If you are saying that a CJ can keep people in line,
I didn't say
why is he afraid?
I never said that.
No, that after a committee was set to probe her own issues, he doesn't have the same confidence that he had to be able to keep people in line. That these people that I was able to keep them in line, they will defend me.
But back to the point where he was referencing, having to do with a comment on the sentencing of Ataa Ayi and the fact that the CJ disclosed that he considered his personal safety in the sentencing. Do you think that that's fair?
So that the first question I would also want to put across as part of the discussion we had this morning is that, was he the only person who sat on the case, or there was a panel?
He was the only one. He said he was one who
went to High Court.
Yeah,
as
one.
So that was the only person, meaning that was a practice at then. So if we are...
That you consider your safety also...
No, I'm coming. That was the practice at then. Because we have seen and we have heard from just the immediate gone CJ, who was saying that after giving an appointment letter and showing the conditions of service, he chose to exchange private trips with commercial trips because that was the practice.
No, but
and this is what I'm trying to... No, let me land. So what I'm saying is that this practice...
Life.
Yes, so this practice has been brought to light. If possible, I am not in support of that statement because it could have been my brother, it could have been anybody. But if we are going back, then we should start reviewing every case from that time up to now. And let's be sure that those judgments that were given, not only him, because normally they follow a certain practice. And they will tell you that precedents. Normally they look at precedents.
I think it's an interesting point you're making.
Yes.
You think that what the CJ mentioned, it might not be exclusive to him.
No.
Something that the judges among themselves consider.
It could have been
nobody has been caught. He has been caught in his own word. Nobody has been, none of the judges have been caught. He has been caught in his own word, and that's what we are talking about. He himself said all those things. None of the judges have said anything. What are you talking about?
Precedents.
I am really shocked that
the key thing,
the direction that you are going
with a final
No, but if this is the case, then it is dangerous.
Yes.
It is extremely dangerous.
That is why we are here to rescue, because see, the same person who is coming out, you know, before the committee, he has to swear an oath, right? To make sure that everything he's going to say is the truth. He could have decided to keep quiet on that, but he feels that what happened in the past is not something that he was happy about, that at a point people were doing it and he had to do it. So he has to bring it to light to make sure that we streamline things. Not everybody will do that. Right. People have done worse things and they cover it. Look, people have taken decisions that have gone against people. We were here when we saw about the petitions that was presented to the president against the outgone Chief Justice. We have one of our solid police officers, Ayamga. He was abused in court, and as part of the proceedings, they took that out. This is something that has been ongoing until this man decided to test the law. A lot of people have suffered that fate and they have kept quiet. So there are a number of things ongoing, and it is better that we allow the system to bring those things out so that we deal with them as part of the research agenda. I'm happy you said it.
All right. I'm going to take a few comments, but let me just get some final comment from Doc so that then I'll come read some few comments from our viewers, and then we'll get final thoughts from my guests in studio. Doc, just finally though, have you got some final thoughts you want to share with us as far as the future of the CJ is concerned, briefly?
Well, I just hope that some of the commitments he's made, he has just won in roughly about a year in office before we get to nominate another Chief Justice. But I just hope that in the next year that he has, he will take the kinds of steps that even if he doesn't do it completely, it begins to set not just the Supreme Court, but our entire judiciary system on a path where eventually citizens would regain some of the lost confidence and trust in that institution.
Well, Doc, thank you very much for your time this morning. Really appreciate your thoughts. Now, we want to hear from you. If you haven't sent your messages yet, send them to us, all right? Let's get your thoughts on this entire process. I'll come to the studio, pick final thought for my guest, and then we'll get into it. We're going to get the messages now because, understand, there's been quite a lot of comment coming in now. Okay, great. So here, we've got them. Interesting. So let me start from here. Good morning. Okay. Still messages coming to the, GG Award winners. He said, K. Frimpong says, good morning. It's sad how government, let me see. Okay, let me get a few ones here. Okay, so, all right, guys. Okay, well, interesting. Way back yesterday, my goodness. Okay, he said, good morning, this is Abdul Ganiu. He says, this man could have simply started the stated the severity of Ataa Ayi's crimes, cited the relevant laws, and used that to justify the length of the sentence. Instead, he relied on personal sentiment. It makes me wonder how many people are sitting in jail because a judge allowed personal opinions to influence their decisions. Are we really saying that sentencing now includes a judge's own assumptions, true or false, instead of following what the law prescribes? And people find this amusing. It's turning justice into theater, he says. Imagine how many people he may have sentenced unfairly just because he feared for his own safety. What exactly is funny about this? And for the record, he didn't avoid sentencing Ataa Ayi because he was innocent. Ataa Ayi was guilty. Okay, this one says, Mensa says, Honorable Afenyo-Markin is always eager to disrupt anything done by the government. Why was he trying to question the integrity of the nominees for political point? It is better that they boycott the vetting today, which actually helped the process proceed successfully. Honorable Afenyo-Markin shouldn't always try to use every situation to revive his collapsed MPP or impress his party foot soldiers. Ghanaians voted for JDM and NDC to reset the country. Are we on course? My regards to Honorable Collins Dauda. Okay, we see that. Positive change in Medina says, those who aided the passage and assented to the e-levy, even when the matter was still in court, are today asking why Parliament should proceed with the vetting of a new CJ nominee, even as Tokunu is in court. I sometimes find it difficult to understand the reasoning of the MPP. Good morning. Honorable Afenyo should be advised that the Chief Justice in making for nothing at all is far, far senior on the bar. He should accord him the due respect. If your party is destroyed, you are not the one to resurrect it. The stubborn fly follows the corpse into the grave. Free advice. Moses from Tripoli. Okay, Moses. In fact, let me commend the mighty minority caucus in Parliament led by Honorable Minority Leader for the good work done for their constituents and the good people of Ghana. They have proved to Ghanaians that parliamentary proceedings isn't just about numbers. We are super proud of them. Okay, some commendations there. Good morning. Honorable Afenyo-Markin will continue to this committee any day he is involved. It would be good if they ignore him completely from the committee. If Madam Tokunu removal not to do their main duties, then they should resign and follow her and go. What is all this? Okay, interesting. Why is someone sending me betting code this morning? IB Wale says, whether we like it or not, the posture of the majority leader culminated with the chairman was clear that the minority will not be given enough floor to interrogate the nominee. It's only the minority who could probe the nominee well. I never see this type of heckling even in advanced democracies like the US. Good morning, I am Eben in Kwabenya. The minority thinks they have their say unnecessary, but the majority leader didn't allow them at all. Thanks to the majority leader. Let me take maybe two more. Good morning. To promote, okay. It says the NDC rep, okay, interesting. This one says, good morning, Razak. The use of AI to panel judges in courts is much ado about nothing. Really? Because the courts have been packed with the NDC judges. Unfortunately, President Mahama had succeeded in removing CJ Getru-Tokunu in order to bring his own CJ Baffoe-Bonnie. However, those who are happy to see CJ being removed in Ghana should be happy to see another CJ being removed when the tables turn. All right, maybe a final one. Good morning, my brother. I want to ask a question. Is it true that the former CJ was bidding for MPP, as some say? As a layman, what minority in Parliament is telling us that what they say was true and very sad. Okay, well, wow, my goodness. Oof, so many messages. Okay, let me just take one final one, randomly. Greetings. In fact, Ghana is indeed in dark clouds. Just listen to the NDC submission. Is he saying Afenyo-Markin was CEO, that's why you object to the nomination of CJ? That's interesting. In any case, I support the minorities walk out because the whole process was a preconceived minded thing. All right. Okay. All right. Let me just take my final comment from my colleagues, and quite a number of messages have come to us.
Well, the time you give me is...
Oh, you had a lot of time, more than me.
You see, you allow Benghazi to spill the lies and all that, but you see... You should...
okay, then let me start with you on the final comments. Let me start with you. Yeah.
So what I was saying is that if you look at what is ongoing, recently we heard about the Abronye's issue. The same judge who was giving verdicts in the last 8 years. You see, now, because people were giving him applause every day when he gives verdicts, oh, you have done good well, you have done well, you have done well. Now, he cited Animal Farm. He cited Mugabe and others for refusal of bail. This is a practice that is ongoing. And there are precedents, so people are free as part of the judicial service. They are free to do it because in the past so many years or so they've been doing it and nothing is happening. This is why we need to reset. This is why we need to reset, because when that statement came out, everybody, including myself, will condemn that statement, using it as a basis for refusal of bail. That did not have the entire logic in terms of, legal backing. But this is a similar thing that has come. Somebody is recounting what happened previously, some years ago, 2005, 20 years. And he's telling us that the practice at then was that you have to fear for your life. And so, as part of what we're doing, I also did something like that. He's bringing it to light so that as part of the reset agenda, we all look at it and we know how to help the judiciary to regain the confidence and all that. And he stated a number of things that will help in terms of bringing the confidence in the service.
Do you think he should go and engage the minority just to win them over?
Oh, no. The minority, they have decided that the constituents who voted for them to come and represent them and bring out their ideas and views, they will deny them the opportunity. So, we know. We have elections coming in the next 2-3 years. So the constituents will have to decide whether to bring them back again to be boycotting everything that borders on Ghana's progress and, for advancement and development. I don't have to say that, but the constituents know better. But what I want to put across finally before I end everything is the fact that this whole thing, the fight that happened or the interaction or whatever we call unexpected issue that happened at the committee level is because somebody is trying to please a God. And we have to put this on record. It is only a God that people will sacrifice their whole life. And that is what Honorable Afenyomakin was doing. He is pleasing a demigod who is a former Chief Justice. All right. Because that is his savior. And on any day, we know. All right. Because he has done a lot for him.
Ben, final comment.
Dr. Ntiamo.
Yes.
I have always been, I'm always... I don't know, I admire the fact that you don't let small things like truth and reality stand in your way.
Of course,
when everybody knows the reality on ground. I admire your confidence and your consistency in this Sergio Ramos kind of job that you are doing this morning. Look, the whole point has to do with the fact that, and I agree with Lawyer Clinton here, that our sanctity as a nation must be taken care of. We all have to tune in to that word. Razak, we are not only in dark times, but you see, anyone that has conscience would know that this Chief Justice that is being nominated to ascend to one of the highest thrones is not going to help us. Why? Because you have series of cases of the elsewhere government appointees who have been accused of other crimes against the state. My only fear is the fact that if the acting Chief Justice, whose brother was convicted in the elsewhere government, is going to be the Chief Justice and head our judiciary. look at, do you anticipate the number of things that will come?
How can you say this?
I'm telling you this because it is very, very dangerous. A man who had every right to consider fundamental human rights of others will sit down based on his fear, convict somebody on the mirrors of fear, and not even consider the supreme rule of this land.
But do you think Ataa was guilty?
No, he was. But he says that he could have given him 30 years, which in any instance would have been fair. But I have read to you that punishment are also to serve as a forum for deterrence, right? And to also correct and shape up the one who is guilty.
Let me get your thoughts on this finally, so I can come to Amanda, then we'll wrap it up. What do you think the CJ can do to win you guys over?
Well, with what he has said, there's nothing that he can do to win anybody over. He said those things himself.
There's nothing he can.
And look, people were even light-minded about the things that he said. They were laughing at it.
All right, let me.
The reason why he said that, it was just to create some, comedy or sarcastic whatever to erode down the tension in the room. But in doing that, he spilled out the truth.
All right.
He betrayed himself. And that is very dangerous to our democracy.
Let me give Amanda the final thoughts.
Anyway, my last word, we are going to petition the nominee that under Article 296, discretionary powers are supposed to be used in the right.
So you file a petition?
Yes, of course. We have to.
Yeah, we'll follow up on that.
And there must be justice for Ataa Ayi, although he was guilty. We believe that the sentencing wasn't fair. The sentencing was based on fear. And that is not good. And that is not healthy for our democracy. That is what we are going to do.
All right, Amanda, let me give you the final.
National Petition Party, of course, it's normal.
I think that I'm hopeful that the incoming Chief Justice will rise to the solemnity of the occasion and, to just restore confidence. And I think he's 17 years at such a high level. This is his moment. And
1 year to...
Yeah, he's got 1 year. Saying that, however, I do believe that this is the moment to really grasp the judiciary must outlive political cycles in terms of politics, strategic maneuvering, and as capable as this incoming Chief Justice is, one wonders what was the thought behind having someone there for 1 or 2 years, because, the nominee must be capable of leading for a longer time. It helps the judiciary, it protects the judiciary's independence, it's symbolic and it's strategic. So one wonders, the thought process that went into picking someone for
just 1 year.
For 1 or 2 years, even though he is the most senior member of that panel. But ultimately, the judiciary is the co-equal, to the legislature and the executive, basically, and it's the final arbiter of everything legal, basically. So I'm just hoping, the word of the day is that the sanctity of the moment, that NPP, NDC will realize this is not the arena for politics, this judicial arm, and the judiciary will strengthen themselves, because our nation's history shows what happens when there's this massive slippery road and you've got a new one coming in for 1 year, it weakens the system, and then another one, and then there's going to be more politics behind that. It's not the executive's role, it's not their territory. And as intelligent people, as academic people, as people who care about the future of this country, because at the end of the day, the precedent being set could well harm the people who are themselves setting the precedent.
Yeah, that's true.
Because they are rather teaching the next what to do. And then you take 10, 20 years and what is the judiciary going to look like?
Yeah, well, that's a question that we're all going to wait to see. What it means is that sometime 2027, we might be back here talking about the vetting of another Chief Justice, because come next year, the Chief Justice, once confirmed, will also retire, and then we'll be back here. Maybe at that time, the minority will have the opportunity to vet another Chief Justice. It looks like they didn't take this opportunity. Well, that's all we have for you today. Doc, thank you very much for coming. And Ben, thank you for coming. Amanda, thank you very much for coming. And this is how we develop a country. Divergent views, but we still move on as one people. You see Doc and Ben enjoying themselves.